about the photo drama. Welcome, Brother Brian.
Thank you, Brother Laban. And brethren, good afternoon. I'll try again. Brethren, good afternoon. Everyone woke up. That's good. So one of the secrets I will tell you right now that perhaps some of the other speakers before me did not share with you is that standing here really is the best view that you can have within this hall because you can see everyone that's out there. So I'm pleased to have that opportunity right now myself. So, brethren, most, if not all of you have heard of the photodrama of creation, but whether you have or have not, our plan this afternoon is not only to briefly touch upon some of its general themes, but to share why this is being presented as a subject during this convention, some added historical background on the photodrama, and how it may be connected to satisfying a certain prophecy. Now, except those of us here from Canada and the United States, each of you should have already been given at least one of these very lightweight books to take home with you. But what I can tell you is that there are a total of 500 of these photodrama of creation books that have been delivered to this convention through the loving generosity of the Dawn Bible Students Association. You should note that the Dawn's labors in packing and incurring the cost to ship heavy boxes of these books from its plant in the United States to Ghana was a massive undertaking on their part. So again, we thank the Lord for the love and laboring efforts of the brethren who work at and support the Dawn in thinking enough to send these to those of us here to add to our convention blessings. As most of you know, the photodrama contains valuable lessons from the Bible in somewhat of a time-sequential order, capturing unfurling events of God's divine plan, which makes it a helpful study tool since it was uniquely prepared with that focus in mind. Now, unlike most Bible student literature, the photodrama book was not distributed as a singular work, but was actually an offset of a 4-part audiovisual presentation produced under the direction of Pastor Russell. With regard to its content, it provides a chronological composition of Bible-based events from the account of creation that we're actually covering during this convention. That includes that of the first man, his fall, events leading to the destruction of the world that was, the age of the patriarchs, the events of the Jewish age stemming from their period of favor to disfavor, the gospel age we're now living in, the promised restoration of the human family through the 1,000-year kingdom, and even the period described as the ages to come, beyond 1,000 years, when the human family will be perfected. So yes, these are all components captured through this documentary, all of which the centerpiece of God's divine plan comes through the life and death of our beloved Lord and Master Jesus Christ. Now, from a historical standpoint, the production work of the photodrama began in 1912, and it was first rolled out to audiences on January the 11th, 1914. Its premiere showing was at a place called the Temple Theater in New York City, where incredibly, at the time, an audience of 5,000 people attended. Now, that's a lot of people to attend anything, certainly in one showing, but particularly on a presentation about the Bible, which is not imaginable in the world we live in today. You know, 1914 was early in the 20th century, and while none of us here were alive then, Historical accounts reflect that this was a period of modernism, which was a cultural movement to reflect rapid technology advances of the day versus the so-called agrarian or farm life period which largely preceded it. And humanism also, which emphasized human reasoning and scientific inquiry. So in short, both of these movements were gaining control over theological thinking, and the effect of this caused many to question the authenticity of the scriptures. And as such, the arrival of the photodrama served to offset the swaying of many people's minds from these movements through a film unlike any other at that time, or really ever since. Now, while we can't imagine a world during our lifetimes that doesn't simultaneously capture moving images with matching voices, this was totally unheard of in 1914, as those who then went to theaters only observed silent movies in black and white. To the contrary, the original photodrama was presented with color slides and some moving color videos, synchronized with narration from audio records, including live footage of the pastor talking. It ran for 8 hours in length, and it was shown in 4 parts of 2 hours each. And even if you care to view the original production in totality today, it's all on YouTube, so it's there for your viewing pleasure. And hopefully that's not interfering with what we spoke about earlier on social media. Now, what is also remarkable about the photodrama is that by the end of 1914, it had been presented to over 9 million people in North America, in Europe, in New Zealand, in Australia. And at that time, the combined populations of these areas was just over 550 million people. So if you do the math, it's roughly 2% of the people in these countries saw this documentary. Now, that percentage may not seem like a lot, but when you consider that young children, the elderly, invalids, and those living in remote areas, which most at that time did, were either not capable of understanding this film or able to go to theaters to see it, we think that 9 million people, that type of viewership was significant. The cost of the photodrama, it costs, and we're going to use US dollars for our example, it costs $300,000 US dollars to produce in 1914. Now, if we want to fast forward to 2026, what that would equate to is roughly 10 million US dollars. Now, here's a question for you. With such a large production cost, how do you think the pastor, or how much do you think the pastor charged the public, I should say, to see the photodrama when we consider that most theaters charge the fee for patrons to come in and view the films? Any idea how much the pastor charged? I can't hear. The answer is, I know Richard Doctor is speaking, but his voice is not working right now. Sorry, Brother Richard. But he's correct. It costs absolutely nothing. It was free, courtesy of the brethren bearing the production costs, which is why all of us should also voluntarily contribute what we can if we desire to do a good sacrificial work before the Lord. Now, as we prepare to conclude our remarks, when our comments began, we suggested that the photodrama may be directly connected to satisfying a certain prophecy. And while Bible students may have differing thoughts on this, we'll nonetheless share ours. We want to go to the second chapter of 2 Kings. And in the second chapter, we have an account of the Lord taking Elijah to 4 successive places where he thought he would be taken to heaven. And these places were Gilgal, Bethel, Jericho, and Jordan. Now, Some of the Lord's people think that these locations correspond with 4 different points of time after the start of the harvest, that being 1874, 1878, 1881, and 1914. And with Jordan, we would suggest that the time feature associated with this river is also 1914. But the scriptures do not say that the Lord took up Elijah to the heavens after arriving at Jordan, but rather we would submit that this point represents the end of the Gentile times or Gentile rule over the people of Israel, even though the blessings of the kingdom, we would submit, do not commence until after the universal sway of earthly kings over the affairs of this earth are abolished and they are finally evicted from their offices. Now, in looking at 2 Kings 2:8, we're told that Elijah took his mantle and smote the waters at Jordan so that he and Elijah could go over dry shod. And then when we get to verse 11, we find that they still went on walking and talking together until there was a chariot of fire that parted them with Elijah, picturing, we think, the last members of the church class being taken up in a whirlwind to heaven, leaving Elijah, who we think pictures the great company, behind. And so it is today. We don't know who among us will become a part of the church class, who among us will become great company members, but the Lord's people globally continue to walk and talk together until the last members of the church are gone, leaving the great company behind. Now, for those of you that have an appreciation for the harvest message, you may want to take a look at reprint 5846. This was written on February 1st, 1916, under the heading, What Elijah's Mantle May Signify. And part of what the pastor said was that he did not think that the smiting had fully taken place. He was also asked whether he thought the photodrama had a part in it. His response was that it may be. He was also asked, will there be something more? He said, we do not know. We rather think there is something more. Now, do we see evidences from 1914 and onward that the waters, seemingly representing peoples, were divided from the effects of a smiting or a smiting message? Again, we think that the conclusion of the Gentile times brought an end of the divine right of kings, and communism later came on the scene. But there was also the Balfour Declaration issued by the British government in 1917, which supported a Jewish national homeland in Palestine. And sure enough, Zionist leader David Ben-Gurion proclaimed that the establishment of the State of Israel took place in 1948. And following this, Jewish and Arab conflicts got hot again long after the Roman armies entered Jerusalem and destroyed the Jewish temple in AD 70, causing the Jews to be exiled from the land. Thank you, my brother. And they returned soon after the start of the Gospel Age harvest, and those conflicts continue to this day, including the current war brought against the Arabs in Iran by the governments of Israel and its still loving ally, the United States, all of which we would suggest is an outgrowth of Jordan antitypically being smitten in 1914. Also, if we look after the pastor's death in October 2016, there was a publication of Volume 7, The Finished Mystery, with its many errors, even though it did say that Brother Russell was a Laodicean messenger. However, the division work from the antitypical smiting that the pastor did not see was the force of Judge Rutherford, who directed the writing of Volume 7 and later wrestled away control of the original Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, that then produced the photodrama to become a part of the 1931 formed legal corporation that we know as the Jehovah's Witnesses, who continue to water down the harvest message we've come to appreciate through the ministry of the pastor. So, if it could be that the brotherhood were united under the sole influential voice of the pastor until 1914 production of the photodrama precipitated a smiting or fracturing effect upon the people, including the subsequent split that later created the Jehovah's Witnesses, or even how some of the brethren, both then and now, are not as united as they should be? We ask that question because there are brethren today that suggest that all the smiting work is still future. But if that's true, who among the Lord's people today could speak with the type of authority that the pastor had? We ask that question. And also, what would that message be that would galvanize the Lord's people? In short, we don't see this as occurring in the future, particularly as our ranks continue to shrink with 144,000 bride class filling up on the other side of the veil. So from a scriptural standpoint, we would suggest that the symbolic smiting of Jordan commenced in 1914. However, in the case of the second smiting of Jordan by Elisha, it seems that the brethren are largely in agreement that this pictures the death of the great company, and when he comes up on the other side, the ancient worthies are then on the scene. So much to think about, dear brethren, but those are remarks. And again, all 500 of the photo drama books will soon be distributed to you, and may his blessings remain over the rest of this convention. Amen.